You and I, face to face, eye to eye.
But I decided today I'm going to do something a little different, so I crumbled this dollar up. And we're going to give unto Caesar what is Caesar, so hopefully I don't hit anybody in the head doing this. And the symbol here is to ignore the Fed. And we're here to encourage trade. I don't care if it's Bitcoin, I don't care if it's silver, I don't care if you trade with tomatoes or potato chips, it doesn't matter, as long as there's something with value. And we've got great examples of great people here in Philadelphia. There's the Bitcoin Philadelphia group. It's Bitcoin PHL, but you guys got to have a better name because you can't say that publicly. But there's the Bitcoin group. Derek Freeman is going to be speaking in a little bit. And Derek, if you are friends with him on Facebook or you follow him on Twitter, you'll see he posts pictures of himself like drinking a latte, and he's like, I just paid for this in Bitcoin. I don't know what you're doing. And it's just something like that's really inspiring, and you look sharp as a tack today. Makes me nervous. Ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker we're going to bring up is a very good friend of mine named Jim Babb. You all know him and love him. And Jim's up, I don't know what he's going to say, but you know it's going to be awesome. So please give a warm welcome to Mr. Jim Babb.
Thank you. You know, we've been coming here since 2008, at least 10 times. I know many of you have been here every time. And in fact, this place is so familiar that I've added the rooftop snipers to my Christmas card list. But it is always a pleasure to stand with you to expose the nastiest criminal organization of modern times. So for 100 years, the Fed has plundered the world and financed the slaughter of countless millions. When it comes to death, destruction, and theft, the Fed has very few rivals. Yet only a small minority are actually aware of this. You can't help but be impressed with this 100-year crime spree. And I have to admit that when we started having these, the obstacles in our way, to me, seemed insurmountable. I mean, how could we possibly disrupt an institution whose tentacles entangle so much of our society? An institution that is the lifeblood of the ruling class. An institution that can harvest the wealth of the world and use it to finance an army against us. Little did I know that in just a few years, we would actually be celebrating the end of central banking. And it wasn't a key election that turned the tide. It wasn't an audit the Fed bill in Congress. It wasn't an armed rebellion. It wasn't even Ron Paul. We didn't even have to convince the majority that the Fed was evil. So when your grandkids ask, you can tell them that entrepreneurs think the Fed. Total war. It took 200 years for the postal monopoly to be broken by email. It took 70 years for web video to break the FCC's control of television. It's taken 100 years, but just as information was freed by the internet, currency is also becoming free. Of course, I'm talking about the dawn of decentralized cryptocurrencies. Now, Bitcoin is just the start. Peer-to-peer systems are rendering centralized control systems obsolete. I couldn't be more thrilled about this development. This is an incredible time. Look around you. Remember these faces. Pay attention to the details, because I have no doubt that we are participating in one of history's most significant paradigm changes. This is an advance on par with the internal combustion engine and the internet. The shift from centralized control to peer-to-peer systems is more than a technology shift. It's a cultural shift with profound implications. And we get to be part of this. We get to fan the flames. I can't think of a better reason to celebrate. So don't get me wrong, the Fed is mortally wounded, but it's still going to do some damage in its final death throes. We don't know how long it's going to take to bleed out, but it's hemorrhaging. It won't go down without a final temper tantrum. Watch them try some desperate end-stage looting, but there is no mathematical way that the Fed can survive the peer-to-peer revolution. You know, they say predictions are very tough, especially about the future. But the future has no central banks to fund these powerful central governments and their endless wars. So even the internet itself is growing more resilient and decentralized. I don't think Al Gore would have invented the internet if he had known where this was headed. The blockchain is a shared ledger of Bitcoin transactions. No central server maintains it. Copies are shared across a peer-to-peer network. This is what makes Bitcoin unstoppable. Now, there is no central point of weakness to exploit. Now, this concept is spreading beyond a simple ledger of financial transactions. Already, a similar blockchain is in place designed to bypass the state-controlled internet DNS system. That's the system that allows a web address to connect to a particular website. Currently, the central state powers have the ability to shut down a domain if they disagree with the website content. State access to the central DNS system gives them this power. However, some very clever people figured out that the blockchain could also be used to store DNS information in a decentralized fashion. When complete, this breakthrough has the power to render government censors impotent. Check out Namecoin or research the .bit domain for more information on that. So imagine what the world will look like with a free exchange of information, a free currency, and the ability to easily conduct commerce with any individual anywhere in the world without taxes, bank fees and regulations, inflation, or parasitic politicians getting in the way. This will be a new renaissance. The biggest obstacle we have right now is the belief in government schooling. So when this wave of decentralization reaches education, we're going to see a new era of prosperity that has never been previously imagined. The future will have little need for central authorities. The culture of obedience is being subverted by peer-to-peer culture. Individuality is destroying collectivism. The entrenched powers are stockpiling billions of rounds of ammo, tanks and drones, but remember, government is always preparing for the last war. These stockpiles will be useless against the ideas that have already been released. So congratulations, you did it. The Fed will die from neglect, like some bloated whale on a beach on some distant deserted shore. So now we get to celebrate, but our work has just begun. Opportunities to build the counter-economy have never been better. When the slave dollar is finally rejected as the world's reserve currency, things are going to get tough in the U.S. But what if there was already a parallel free market currency infrastructure already in place? Our challenge is to help build that world. So when the slave dollar collapses, nobody really cares. It's already happening. So let's be part of it. The next phase of getting away from the Fed won't involve rallies like this. The time for street demonstrations is over. Now we get to build stuff. We get to invent or reinvent our businesses to take advantage of the new peer-to-peer culture. As entrepreneurs, we get to build a world that truly ignores the Fed. So let's get to work.
Every day in our place, satellite feeds.
He's right. Entrepreneurs, ourselves, people that are going to say enough with this are the ones that are really going to end the Fed. It has nothing to do with politicians, believe me. Ron Paul wrote a bill that was a page and a half long called H.R. 1207, and a bill that was a page and a half long got held up for so long and then got attached to a bill that was so ugly that Ron Paul himself couldn't even vote for it. So I know a lot of people put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into getting H.R. 1207 up and trying to get people to audit the Fed and all for a while.
How's everyone? Good. My name's Poe. I represent a group of concerned citizens in Philadelphia called the Panic Hour. I'm also the founder of a yet-to-be-named Libertarian Charm School, which will be giving classes in the spring, which will help libertarians talk to other people rather than libertarians. So I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to thank Philadelphia Civil Affairs for coming. Without Philadelphia Civil Affairs, free speech would not exist in this city because someone has to babysit it. So let's thank those guys for coming out. We appreciate it. You know, the Federal Reserve is, like Jim has said, crippling society. But for a long time, I felt like there's no way to change this, you know? And the thing is, the rise of Bitcoin, it has really changed the actual fucking world. I mean, politicians are worried about Bitcoin. They're shutting down Silk Road, you know? I mean, we are making an impact to a certain extent. But beyond that, just money in general is what's wrong with what's going on. I mean, people worrying about consumerism, people all fucking pissed off about Duck Dynasty, whatever the fuck that is, all week long. Like, you know, they're drone bombing people, you know, the economy's crashing, they're fucking arresting people for smoking marijuana, you know, I know. So, but just listen, fighting for freedom nowadays has become a very risky thing. I have a lot of friends that are in a lot of trouble for raising their voices, you know, right now. So we really have to stop fighting each other, you know, fighting each other on the internet, fighting each other out in the streets. I mean, we need to take this message to a larger audience. I mean, it's great to be with all you guys, but like, you know, we have to stop insulating these issues and bring them to the sheeple because they really need, you know, something.
And it's the importance of this Ignore the Fed rally. And it's that we can end it, we can audit it, but really at the end of the day, that's just asking tyrants for permission. And the best thing that you can do is localize, trade locally, barter in gold and silver, use Bitcoin, and that's going to bring down this international monopoly on a foreign currency, the dollar.
So, who's heard of Ron Paul? You've all heard of Ron Paul. And he introduced me to gold, silver, and what's going on here behind the Fed. And I have a feeling a lot of you are in the same boat. When I heard about what is going on here and how I'm implicated and how every time I swipe a credit card, I'm creating new money and making my friends and neighbors poorer, I knew I had to do something about it. I had to change what I'm doing. I had to change how I'm living so that I'm not using their system. They've set it up so that we're all a part of this game. But fortunately, I've got some good news to share with you. You can walk away, and that's what we're all here to celebrate. So when I heard about Ron Paul and gold and silver, I said, that's the solution. I'm not going to use the dollar. I'm going to trade with my friends, businesses, neighbors. I'm going to trade silver, value for value. If I can trade in silver, I can be free from the Fed, and then I can show others that path. And we'll all be free from the Fed. Well, I've done that for a few years, and that works okay. Trading in silver with my friends and local businesses enhanced my freedom and kept value in the community. Well, Ron Paul recently said, and I hope you all heard this quote, there will be alternatives to the dollar, and this might be one of them. But he wasn't talking about gold and silver. Can anyone guess what he was talking about? That's right, Bitcoin. He is excited about Bitcoin, and why is that? Because it has all the qualities of gold and silver plus some extras that make it extra beneficial. Ron Paul said that if people start using Bitcoin en masse, quote, it'll go down in history as the destroyer of the dollar. Does anyone else think that's totally badass? Yes, sir! So I didn't choose dollars. Dollars were forced on me by government because dollars are how the man does business. Gold and silver gave me an escape from that. And now Bitcoin has accelerated that escape beyond what I could have even imagined 2 years ago. Bitcoin businesses are popping up all over the world. We've got some here in Philadelphia. Bitcoiners are using their phones to buy things at tens of thousands of stores across the United States. And new waves of entrepreneurs that Jim Babb mentioned, small business owners, have been born from this new Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin knows no borders. It requires no ID. It works whether you're in Philadelphia, Paris, or Barcelona. And since the Bitcoin network lives online, it's as permanent as the internet. My favorite thing about Bitcoin is that no one is in charge. It's completely decentralized. Yeah, rock on. Which means there's no central point of failure, no central point of attack. If one node goes down, the others keep the blockchain online. And some of you may have read in the news this week that a wealthy entrepreneur just put a Bitcoin node in space. So good luck, government, trying to knock that one down. You can even run one of these nodes yourself. You can look up the code yourself. It's all open source. How does that compare with the transparency of the Fed? Bitcoin has been used for charity. Join the Bitcoin Reddit page and you'll see every day there are generous 20-somethings, 30-somethings who've just stumbled across this new technology, enhanced their own wealth, and they want to give it to the people who need it most. The young children who are suffering of diseases, the homeless. Hoodie the Homeless put clothes on hundreds of homeless in California this Christmas season. Sean's Outpost could eradicate homelessness, make it completely voluntary. People can be homeless if they want to be, but now they don't have to be. In Fort Lauderdale, acres of land were purchased with Bitcoin. Now the homeless people can live there. It's just been given to them. This is your property now. You can buy your groceries with it. Anything, using apps. So get started. I started a Bitcoin Philadelphia group so that people can learn how you can use it. There are a lot of good questions, but I can't answer them all right now. We meet up every Thursday at 30th Street Station at 6:30. Come if you have questions. You won't leave with them unanswered. The website is bitcoinphl, as in Philadelphia, bitcoinphl.com. And just to close on this, when you're faced with a bully, in my mind you have two options. You can fight or walk away. In my mind, the bigger man is the one who walks away. And Bitcoin, gold, silver, alternative currencies, they give us that power back. Walk away. Walk away from the Fed. You don't need them. You're free today. Thank you.
I'm reaching out to you.
Hate the drug war and the Fed. Hate war and war and the Fed.
Every day next to us, friends surrounding, piling up and feeding in life support sound into my skin. Nothing's wrong.
The Federal Reserve is the brainchild of Edward Mandel House, the creature from Jekyll Island. And it is a private bank and it must be abolished immediately so we can protect our sovereignty and promote more liberty and freedom in the United States.
Contrary to what some people might think, the monstrosity behind you is not the source of evil in the world. It is merely a symptom of the insanity of the world. Now, I'm not saying that the people who run this beast aren't evil, narcissistic, sociopathic, murderous bastards, because they most certainly are. I am saying that there is nothing we can do to them which will solve the problem, because they are not the underlying problem. The underlying problem resides in people's heads. I would compare it to this. If somebody's brain is malfunctioning to the point that they hallucinate pink elephants, the answer is not an elephant gun. The answer is not to shoot that which does not exist. The answer is to correct their perception of reality so that they see reality as it is. The same is true here. When people say, how do we end the Fed? How do we end the income tax? How do we end the war on drugs? How do we end the perpetual warmongering? I point out all of those are symptoms. None of those are the problem. And they are all symptoms of the same problem. They all grow from the same root. And as a radical anarchist troublemaker Henry David Thoreau said, there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one striking at the root. And that is the answer. This is a branch. This doesn't matter. When the root is gone, when we identify the root and rip it the fuck out, this won't matter. The uncomfortable part is that the problem resides inside the heads of most people, and it is so tempting to want an outside enemy to point at and to scream at and try to do something to. And it's really uncomfortable to rethink your own thought process and wonder, maybe I'm still adding to the problem. And I speak as one who for years and years and years was still adding to the problem and didn't know it. I was politically active, I believed in government, I believed in voting, I believed in all that hocus pocus, bizarre authoritarian rituals, and I thought I was doing something good. I thought I was doing something useful. So this part may sound a little blunt, it may sound a little harsh. I'll get a little biblical on you despite the fact that I'm a heathen. Before you go trying to take the mote out of your neighbor's eye, check for beams in your own. So here's a little beam test for you. If you look at politicians and you see lawmakers, you do not perceive reality as it is. You cannot fix the world because you are still a carrier of the disease of authoritarianism. If you look at the people who wear badges and funny uniforms and you see law enforcers, you do not see reality as it is. You cannot fix the world because you are still a carrier of the disease. If you still feel a moral obligation to pay tribute to a ruling class, and you think of that as your fair share of paying back to society, you do not see reality as it is, and you cannot fix the world. If you still feel the slightest shred of guilt at voluntarily trading with another human being without giving a cut to the bastards who work in that building, you do not yet see reality as it is, and you cannot fix the world. If you feel any guilt at disobeying the arbitrary bullshit that comes out of Washington, you do not see reality as it is. If you do not recognize them as parasites and liars and thieves and nothing else, then you don't yet see reality as it is, and you can't yet fix the world. If you think the black market is a bad thing, if you think working under the table is a bad, immoral thing, you are a slave. You do not see reality as it is, and you cannot free anybody else. And what it comes down to is, before you can free another mind, you have to make sure your own mind is free. Before we can do away with the symptoms, we have to do away with the problem, and it's 100% mental. I would point out, I was a carrier of the disease of authoritarianism for many years. The people who believe it, it's not because they're evil, it's not because they're malicious, it's not because they're stupid. It's because all of our lives we are surrounded by that lie. And that lie is contagious, and it burrows into our psyches, and it is trained into us by the education system, by most of our parents, by the indoctrination system known as the media, by the government, of course. So it's not that people are evil. It's not that all these people out here who believe in paying their taxes, paying tribute to a bunch of parasites, they're not evil, they're not malicious, they're not stupid, but the contagion that is authoritarianism has infected them, which is self-ownership, and voluntarism is even more contagious. Right now we're outnumbered, but it is spreading, and it is spreading fast, and it is really fun to see how quickly people's minds are being free. And that has to happen before your body is going to be free. What we need is more people who are ready to embrace the label lawbreaker. To embrace the label of criminal. To embrace the label of outlaw. And I don't mean to beat people up and steal things and kill people. You all know what I mean. I mean disobey the arbitrary crap that comes out of Washington with no shame, no guilt, and no hesitation to tell other people, no, I do not pay tribute to most evil gang in the world. I have no obligation to. I have an obligation to go as far out of my way as I possibly can to avoid funding them, to avoid funding these bastards.
And I wasn't supposed to speak, and I didn't even know if I was going to make it today. I'm glad that I was able to. But I just wanted to take a minute on behalf of all of us here, those of us who couldn't make it, those of us who have made it in the past, and anyone who has ever grown because of what Michael Salvi has done to bring us all together the last 5 years. So much time has been put into this, and there's no immediate reward. There's no, besides this, besides looking around and making connections and growing the community and learning. And I more than anything am grateful for what I have learned from every single person I have met as a result of one day receiving a response from sending a message to the End the Fed Facebook page, explaining how I could help and how I could get involved. And it turns out that it was Mike Salvi, and just so much time and effort has been put into this. We all definitely have grown and learned and made great friendships, foundations, and I just wanted to thank him on behalf of everyone and say thank you, Salvi, for doing this. You did an amazing job, and it's wonderful and it's great. And I know and a lot of us say, that we all want to change the world, and we don't always realize that we already have. We're changing it right now, and we're going to keep changing it. So here's to not wanting to change the world, but keep changing it and never stop.
Way to make the dollar more valuable.
Well, we came together today to let people know that the Federal Reserve is a bunch of shit, and that our money is valueless, and that there's actually some alternatives available to people, that we can use the oldest economic system ever created, the barter system, to trade freely with one another. And I think that a lot of us agree that the taxation is without representation, and that our resources are being squandered away for war and other special interest contracts that we don't approve of. So we're here to burn our freaking worthless Federal Reserve notes and endorse alternative training where our evil government doesn't get a cut of the money, and to let people know that there's an active freedom movement that is educating each other on solutions for our global economic meltdown and recession and unemployment, and encourage concepts like agorism and voluntarism and entrepreneurship and cooperatives and being sustainable and financially self-sufficient without being dependent on the state, which is corrupt and illegitimate.
I really don't believe it could have been said better. There's other ways to use currency without paying for war and paying for all these things that on a one-on-one basis nobody would ever agree to. So like I said, I really couldn't have said it better. She hit the nail right on the head.
I think that we want people to know that the Federal Reserve is controlled by special interests. It's
private banks.
Private banks. It's not a institution that serves the people, that's for the people. And we're allowing this institution to control our lives.
Yeah, and not that I agree with democracy, but the way the federal bank is set up has nothing to do with democracy. Most people don't even know who heads the federal bank or who owns it, for that matter. We have no control over it to look at what it does or anything along those lines. So it has nothing to do.
The goal of the rally and the protest is not to end the Fed. We know that a protest is not itself the means to end such a giant, powerful, evil institution, but instead to build a foundation for a network of concerned individuals who will communicate, brainstorm, educate themselves, and educate the rest of the public, about the current problem that we're trying to solve. And our elected officials, our government, isn't doing anything to solve this massive problem and debt that we're dealing with. So we've come together to exchange information, become friends, put our brains together, and let people know that there's actually an alternative out there if you can only imagine the possibilities.
Static's cutting out through the airwaves. I'm